Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Pokemon TCG video. What we are going to be showcasing today is the World Championship deck that was able to win in the Junior Division. So this deck is definitely nothing to scoff at. It's actually quite impressive and works really well. There were definitely some interesting things going on here. By far, the one thing that really stood out to me was the inclusion of a total of 4 copies of the Hawlucha. Now, normally Landorus EX decks are just really ineffective against Seismitoad EX decks for the most part. And that's because of that crippling water weakness. However, Hawlucha can really help mediate that disadvantage that we do have with respects to the typing of that, of the Landorus EX. So Hawlucha, for a single energy card, it can be a pretty effective counter to Seismitoad EXs, often allowing us to get those big knockouts. So we do see a total of 4 copies of the Hawlucha. Again, definitely a card that absolutely stood out to me. We also see, of course, 2 copies of the Landorus EX, which is, of course, probably going to be the main attacker, but again, it really does depend on the situation and what type of deck we're going to be facing. So of course, if we're facing against the Seismitoad EX deck, we probably don't really want to make use of that Landorus EX, again, because of this bad boy right here. So Landorus EX has 2 very powerful attacks. The first one is Hammerhead, which can really allow us for that damage spread, and this is precisely why Landorus EX is such an effective Pokemon in these bat type of decks. So we saw Lando-Bats decks being very popular for quite a bit of time. But unfortunately, against those Seismitoad EX decks, due to that crippling water weakness, they were unfortunately not really able to perform as well as most players would have liked to see them. But nonetheless, a very powerful deck. So Hammerhead, very effective at spreading those damage counters. Land's Judgment, sort of a last resort attack. I mean, it's very energetically expensive, but it can allow us to get those big one-hit knockouts. So it's definitely there in case we're in a bit of a tight situation, or we want to go right ahead and finish things off with one final boom. Now, some of the remaining cards in our deck, guys, we have, of course, the entire bat line. So 4 Zubats, 3 Golbats, and 3 Crobats. These are, of course, to spread some damage counters. And the Zubat has the free retreat cost. We have a single copy of that Lucario EX in this deck. Can be nice. It does have a different weakness when compared to that Landorus EX, which is definitely nice because, I mean, if we are facing some sort of Seismitoad EX deck, we can go right ahead and start attacking with that Lucario EX instead. It has 3 different attacks, which is pretty cool. One of them is the Missile Jab, my apologies. Missile Jab, which is unaffected by resistance, Corkscrew Smash, which allows us to draw until we have up to 6 cards in our hand, and of course the Somersault Kick. So definitely a lot of flexibility with respects to our attacks, and the more energy cards we attach to that Lucario EX, the more power we are able to get out of it. And of course, the very last Pokemon that we have in our deck, guys, is a single copy of the Shaymin EX. Just such a versatile Pokemon. We see it in a lot of the top decks that were able to make it at Worlds. Shaymin EX, again, has the setup ability, allowing us to draw until we have up to 6 cards in our hand. Again, just really flexible card. Can pretty much be squeezed in any sort of deck, so we do see a single copy of that in this respective deck. It is interesting to note, however, that there are 2 copies of the Silent Lab Stadium card that were ran in this deck, which again is a little bit unusual. I mean, usually these Lando-Bat decks don't really run a whole lot of Silent Labs. They tend to focus more so on running those fighting stadiums, but we do see 2 Silent Labs, so just keep that in mind in case you want to grab onto that Shaymin EX and then you realize that this is out at play and then we're unable to draw more cards. So Silent Lab can be detrimental to us, but it can also be really useful, especially if we are facing, for example, Wobbuffet. But I mean, Wobbuffet, our bats can go through them, but there's definitely some other Pokemon that we can effectively counter whenever bringing out the Silent Lab. So we do see 2 copies of that in this deck, and of course a total of 3 copies of the Fighting Stadium. This is, of course, gonna be the main stadium card that is run in this deck, just because it's so efficient. Really gives a massive boost to these fighting type decks. So we see a total of 3 copies of this stadium card in this deck. We see quite a few different ways to repeatedly get those bats back into that hand. The number 1 way, of course, is the Ace Pack Scoop Up Cyclone, allowing us to put 1 Pokemon and all cards attached to it back into our hand. So it's a very effective recycling mechanism to either bring a badly damaged Pokemon or, of course, those bat lines back into our hand, so that we can go right ahead, lay them back down, and stack those damage counters all over again. We also see a total of 4 copies of the Super Scoop Up. Again, quite similar to the Scoop Up Cyclone, however, there is no flip coin requirement, so Super Scoop Up is quite nice as well. And again, of course, it's not an E-Spec card, so it's understandable that it's not as powerful as its big brother. And of course, we have the very last sort of card that can allow us to bring our cards, one of our Pokemon lines back into our hand. That is the Easy. Again, doesn't require any sort of flip requirement, but it is a supporter card, so we should use it wisely. wisely, and it does force us to discard all cards attached to a Pokemon into our discard pile. So we're probably mainly going to be using it to bring those bats back into our hand, because if we use it on a Landorus EX, for example, or a Hawlucha, we do ultimately have to give up those fighting energy cards, and of course those muscle bands as well attached to them, and send them into that discard pile. So just something to keep in mind. So we do see a single copy of that easy. That's pretty much most of the cards that I really felt needed discussing. The remainder of the cards are pretty straightforward. We see a total of 4 Ultra Balls, which again is highly unusual in a fighting type deck, just because Karina usually does most of the work. But again, those 4 Ultra Balls are there, which I guess makes sense, of course, because we do see that entire bat line, and of course the Shaman EX. I feel like 4 is a bit on the overkill side. Personally, I would have gone with 3, but again, this isn't exactly my deck. We see 2 VS Seekers, which allow us to reuse any of those supported cards. We see a total of 8 Draw Supporters, 2 of them being Colress, 4 of them being the Juniper, and 2 of them being the N. Again, just a highly unusual number of N in this deck, but I can't really say a whole lot about that. I mean, clearly this deck is very effective and quite powerful as well. I mean, I've played with it, so I can't really complain about the build whatsoever. We also see a total of 2 Karinas, allowing us to, of course, grab onto those fighting Pokemon, and a item card on the side as well. 2 Lysanders to allow us to lure out any of the opponent's bench Pokemon, and a total of 9 energy cards. 5 of them are fighting energies, 4 of them are strong energies, and we see a total of 4 copies of the muscle band as well. So with that, guys, we're gonna go and find ourselves an opponent. Again, I feel like 4 muscle bands is a bit on the overkill side of things, and personally, I don't think 9 energy cards is enough for this type of deck, because I mean it could be quite difficult. I mean, of course, we don't see any sorts of professor letters and things like that, so it was definitely quite interesting to see a lot of the inclusions of certain cards in this deck, and of course some cards not being included. But again, I have to say that I am quite impressed, and this deck definitely does seem to work quite well and quite fluidly for the most part, so I'm really not complaining. So it looks like we're going to be facing some sort of dragon and some dragon type deck in combination with psychic. I'm gonna assume that it's the dragon type is probably the Dragalge, and of course we're gonna start off with that Shaman EX. I've only played a few games with it, but every single time that I've played with this deck, guys, I always start off with the Shaman EX, which is just downright terrible. I feel like just scrapping it out from this deck entirely. You run a single copy of Shaman EX, you're always going to start off with it. You run a total of 3 or 4 copies of the Shaman EX, you're almost never going to start off with it. I don't know what to say about the Pokemon TCG, guys, but let's see if we can start dishing out some damage early on. Would I actually be able to win the game? Maybe I can actually win, guys. So let's see if I can pull off a turn 1 victory. So I'm going to grab onto that Hawlucha, and I'm going to grab onto that muscle band as well. But this is all dependent on whether or not we get that head when bringing that, when making use of that super scoop up. So let's go and use that, and of course we're going to get the tails. I'm going to go and attach the strong energy card on to that Hawlucha. And I think that's going to be it for now, guys. So I'm going to go and end the turn and just going to let our opponent, and wish him good luck. So we're going to see 2 psychic energy cards attached to the Shaman EX. Of course, our opponent can't attack just yet, of course, because that would force him to lose the game. So we definitely don't want to see that Sky return prematurely. I could have potentially won the game, but of course, my flipping just seems to be terrible. We're going to see that Ultra Ball. So yeah, so we're seeing a bat as well. Acrobikes, not really sure what to expect from this deck. I mean, we also saw dragon types. I would have assumed at this point, through the usage of all those Acrobikes and of course the Trainer's Mail, that this would have been some sort of Night March deck, but again, I'm not really sure what to expect. Okay, it looks like it's going to be Latios EX deck. Alright, I guess that makes sense. Bats do work quite well with the Latios EX, especially the Mega Latios EX, so potentially it's a Mega Latios EX deck instead. And okay, so it looks like we're not going to see that Shaman EX attacking us just yet. Let's go and bring down that Zubat. We should be able to knock out that Shaman EX. So it probably would have been in our opponent's best interest to actually retreat it. This time I'm not going to be taking any chances, guys. I'm going to go and use that Karina to look for, I guess a Landorus EX would be pretty nice. And let's go right ahead and look for that Scoop Up Cyclone again, not taking any chances this time. I do want to get that easy knockout, so let's go and Scoop Up Cyclone that Shaman EX back into her hand, bring out the Hawlucha, lay down the Shaman EX one more time, draw into some additional cards, and awesome, so we have a pretty solid hand. Let's go and attach that strong energy on that Landorus Flying Press for 120 damage. That will allow us to snatch up 2 easy prize cards, so things are definitely looking up for us. I have the Lysander in our hand, so I can definitely use that to get rid of another one of our opponent's Gemini Axis and draw onto 2 more prize cards. So those Hawluchas definitely seem to be absolutely fantastic inclusion in this deck. We are going to see an Ultra Ball. Looks like our opponent is going to bring out a Zubat of his own. We're going to see that Sycamore allowing our opponent to get himself a brand new hand. Verbank City Gym. Okay, and Hypnotoxic Laser. We're gonna see Tails though, luckily. If we see Muscle Band, that will spell the end for that Hawlucha, allowing that the Latios EX to hit for exactly 60 damage. Will that Trainer's Mail allow our opponent to grab onto a Muscle Band? No, it looks like it's gonna be Super Scoop Up instead. I feel like he's really pulling out all the stops to try and get that one-hit knockout. I think we're going to see that Shimini X going back into that hand, yes. And of course then getting laid back, right back down for the setup ability. So, are we going to see Muscle Band? No, it looks like we're not going to see it. Oh, right, but sorry, Verbank City Gym was there. Yeah, so our Pokemon would have gotten knocked out regardless. So let's go and bring out that Lander CX, guys. I'm going to go and stack a damage counter on to that Zubat, and that's going to allow us to get a knockout. And I don't think I'm going to go and attach any more fighting energy cards on that Lander CX. I mean, we do see the Verbank City Gem, so I do have to be a little bit careful with respects to that. Let's go and bring out a Lander CX on to that bench, attach a fighting energy card to it. I don't really think we're going to need that Lucario X. I'm going to go right ahead and use that Juniper. I'm going to go and lay down the Zubat as well. And Fighting Stadium, yeah, I do want to increase the total damage output of that Lander CX by a little bit. Let's go and use Hammerhead, 90 damage and 30 damage as well, so that's going to allow us to take one more prize card. So as you guys can see, this deck is just very, very efficient, very quick, hard hitting, and we're going to see the Verbank City Gym one more time. Hypnotoxic Laser, we're going to see the Tails, so luckily for us that Landers EX is going to remain awake. I also have 2 Super Scoop Ups and of course the AZ in our hand as well, so I can definitely, okay, well, I can't anymore, because of course we're going to see that end card coming into play. Should be able to knock out that Latios EX during our next turn. Currently that Landers EX can hit for exactly 70 damage, however we do have a Crobat in our hand, so we can absolutely get rid of it. Okay, looks like it's actually going to be retreating, and we're going to see a second Latios EX make its appearance. So I could potentially pick up that Latios EX if I bring out one Crobat and one Golbat as well. That'll be more than enough to knock out that Latios EX. So I'm gonna go for a bit of a risk. Let's go and stack those damage counters onto it. Hawlucha as well. Let's go and bring that out. I'm gonna go and attach a fighting energy card to it. Colress, come on, are we gonna get a yes? Awesome. Looks like we're gonna get it. Let's go and bring out that Golbat, guys, and we're gonna be able to knock out that Latios EX. Definitely gonna bring out the Silent Lab as well. Just to get rid of that Verbank City Gym. Let's go and use that Super Scoop Up, and we're gonna flip the Tails, of course. Let's go use Hammerhead, 70 damage and 30 damage as well. So we should be able to win the game during our next turn, hopefully. If we could just get a heads on that Super Scoop Up, we'll be able to go on to the victory, or if we draw onto some sort of Fighting Stadium card or something like that. So things are definitely looking up. Our opponent has only taken a single prize card right now. We only have one prize card left. We are going to see that AZ, that Shaymin EX going back into our opponent's hand. Hypnotoxic Laser, he's going to get the heads, but we repeatedly seem to be getting the tails. I hope we don't see an end card, guys. Of course, that Silent Lab is actually paying off now. Our opponent was not paying attention to that, and that's where the Silent Lab could really bite us in the ass. So that's precisely what I meant, guys, because we're running a single copy of the Shaymin EX as well, and just going to say sorry about that. And we should be able to win this game, guys. So okay, looks like our Lander CX is going to remain asleep, so I'm gonna need a heads on that Super Scoop Up. Are we gonna get one? And awesome, looks like we will. Let's go and bring that Lander CX back into that hand. And yeah, so I believe we have won the game. Yeah, so we actually have. So I'm gonna go right ahead and say GG to our opponent. Let's go and attach that Muscle Band onto it, the Fighting Energy card as well, and go on for the 100 damage knockout, which will allow us to take that very last prize card. Sorry, I have to shuffle around through that mic because I usually do place it right on top of my keyboard, so that can actually make it finicky. I have to sort of play around with it just in case I want to type. So that's why I don't type a whole lot whenever I am recording any sorts of battles. But I will be finding ourselves one more opponent just to give you guys a bit of a better understanding of what this deck is capable of. But I'm sure you guys saw a lot of its damage output. Just very, very hard hitting, very, very solid Lando-Bat deck, I would have to say. Again, it does seem a bit atypical, and definitely there are some changes that I would potentially make it, which I personally feel would improve the deck's consistency, but I mean, I'm sure it was heavily tested beforehand, anyways. So maybe I'm not exactly, maybe I don't exactly have the right sort of mindset for it. So let's see. And looks like our opponent is gonna try and talk to us as well. Let's go right ahead and wish him good luck. And I hope that's all I really have to say. So I'm gonna start off with the Zubats, guys. I'm gonna lay off on the Lucario EXs and the Landorus EX just temporarily. I mean, I hate getting head ringered right away, and it looks like our opponent's going to bring out a Zubat as well. I believe I saw some water Pokemon in there, guys, so I'm pretty sure there are some Seismitoad EXs in there as well, so I may just have to hold off on those Landorus EXs. We're going to see the Ultra Ball right away. Yes, the Shadow Triad, absolutely going to see Seismitoad EX rear its ugly head. Okay, no, so we're actually going to see that Sceptile EX. Alright, so not exactly what I was expecting. So and we're gonna see that, and that's actually gonna help us out. We didn't exactly have the greatest hand, and we should be able to knock out that Zubat during our turn, hopefully. I mean, there's definitely no guarantee. It does have the fighting resistance, so there is a chance that Landorus EX just may not be able to hit for enough damage. So we're gonna see that Shimon EX as well. We have one in our deck as well. Hopefully it's not prized, and I can go right ahead and use that Ultra Ball to grab it out. We're gonna see that Venusaur EX. Sceptile EX will rear its head. So unfortunately, well, I mean, I do have the Lysander, so maybe we can go right ahead for that knockout. So I'm going to go and use that Ultra Ball. Let's go and get rid of the Crobat. And do we have that Shimony EX? Come on, yes, awesome, looks like we do. So let's go right ahead and lay down that Landorus EX, attach the Strong Energy card, lay down that Shimony EX as well. Yes, let's draw onto some additional cards. I do need a Muscle Band, so I'm going to go and lay down the Fighting Stadium for now, the Hawlucha. I'm not sure. Should I really take such a heavy risk just to knock out a Zubat? I don't know. I mean, maybe our priority should be focused on us trying to get rid of that Sceptile EX. So you know what? I think I'm actually going to go and attack that Sceptile EX instead. So let's go and use that Karina, guys. I'm going to go and look for a Hawlucha. And I think I'm going to go right ahead and grab onto a Muscle Band as well, just to increase the total damage output of that Landorus EX. So let's go and lay down an additional Hawlucha onto that bench. Let's go and retreat that Zubat, bring out that Landorus EX, the Muscle Band, Hammerhead for 90 damage. That is definitely a whole lot. And I guess we can go right ahead and hit that Zubat for 30 damage as well. But if it does evolve, well, I mean, hopefully we can knock out that Golbat faster than our opponent can repeatedly bring out those bats and knock out our own bats. Because, I mean, I feel like based on past experiences, bats seem to be the most effective sort of kryptonite against other bats. So just something a little bit funny. So we're going to see that Hypnotoxic Laser, a head. If we see a Muscle Band as well and the Verbank City Gym, that's going to be a one-hit knockout on that Landorus EX. I'm hoping that that's not the case. But again, we do see those Hypnotoxic Lasers and those Shadow Triads, so definitely is a possibility. Looks like, luckily for us, that Landorus EX will be able to survive, so that is definitely kind of nice. I'm going to go and lay down a Golbat, and that's going to allow us to snatch our first prize card by knocking out the opponent's Zubat. I do definitely want to retreat that Landorus EX if possible. So, let's see. I mean, I'll definitely be making use of the Professor Juniper. So I'm gonna go and attach the Fighting Energy card on to that Hawlucha. Sorry, the Muscle Band onto that Hawlucha and the Strong Energy onto him as well. I'm gonna go and get rid of 2 cards in our hand to look for one more Golbat, just to stack a little bit of additional damage counter to some of our opponent's Pokemon. So let's go right ahead, bring out that Golbat, lay it down, and stack 2 damage counters onto that Zubat. So as you guys can see, I'm picking off those bats with my own bat. Let's go and use that Juniper and Scoop Up Cyclone. Are we gonna get it? Sorry, Super Scoop Up. Yes, awesome. Looks like we are gonna get that head. So we'll be able to knock out that Sceptile EX. I'm gonna hold off on the Landorus EX temporarily. Let's go right ahead, use Flying Press for 120 damage to allow us to snatch up 2 prize cards. So these Hawluchas definitely seem to be pulling a very large weight, and just perform absolutely fantastically in these types of decks. So we are going to see that Zubat make its appearance, a Scoop Up Cyclone, sorry, Super Scoop Up, a Tails unfortunately. So we're going to see that Shimon EX remaining in our opponent's bench. Should be able to pick off that Zubat even if it does retreat. We're going to see that AZ. Okay, so that's going to give our opponent a guarantee to return that Shimon EX into his hand. So let's see if he draws out anything good. Alright, so we see that Seismitoad EX rearing its ugly head. So I definitely thought that there was at least one in there. I mean, I did see our opponent's Pokemon types at the very beginning, and I definitely did see a water type. So definitely kind of nice that I decided to hold off on that Hawlucha, on that Landorus EX, but I mean, the only way, well, actually, we have those bats as well. So I'm gonna go and attach the the strong energy card on to that Hawlucha one more time. Let's actually go and AZ those bats back into our hand, and we'll be, actually, no, we won't be able to knock out the Zubat just yet. I still need to bring out a Golbat. I mean, should I bring out one more Hawlucha? Yeah. I mean, I don't really see what the harm in it is. Let's go and use Flying Press for a massive 120 damage, and we should hopefully be able to knock out that Seismitoad EX during our next turn. I could have used the Lysander as well. Maybe I should have to knock out that Shaman EX, but I feel like our priority should be to knock out that Seismitoad EX. I mean, it's pretty crippling to us, the fact that it does put us under the item lock, and our deck has quite a bit of usage for those item type cards. I mean, the Super Scoop Ups, for example, the Scoop Up Cyclone, the Ultra Balls, and things like that. So we're going to see one more Seismitoad EX make its appearance. Luckily, we haven't seen any Verbank City gyms just yet, so that's definitely kind of nice, but I'm sure there are a couple of those in our opponent's deck. So I think we can go right ahead and go with the Professor Juniper, get ourselves a brand new hand. Alright, so we have the Crobat. Yeah, so it looks like we're actually going to be able to win the game, guys. So let us go and knock out that Zubat, take one prize card. I'm going to go right ahead and say GG to our opponent, and then let's go for that final knockout. 120 damage one more time, and that is going to be it. So I'm definitely very impressed with this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also be sure to check out those annotations for a random video and my previous video as well. And yeah, so that is going to be it. Again, thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.